So for academic programs, I have what is called the Big Four. So certainly we have program objectives. Well, people go, well, what are the program objectives? You know the program objectives by completing this simple sentence. At the end of this program, students will be able to ... See where I'm going? At the end of this program, what will students be able to know, be able to do? There should be 4 or 5, 6 common indicators of what students have mastered at the end of their program that demonstrates that they've achieved the objectives of this program. Now, I want to be very clear. Students learn thousands of units of knowledge in the course of a program, okay? I get that. However, there should be 4, 5, or 6 common indicators that you need to measure. That this is really your brand, that you can stake that a Kane student, a Kane graduate has achieved these types of outcomes. So here I have 3 indicators of that. So within each program there are knowledge sets. So what are those core knowledge sets that students should have learned with this degree program? You need to have that conversation, have those debates, and we recognize that different individuals have different perspectives, but there must be something that unites your discipline that people can agree on, that it represents a base knowledge set for students. Same with skills. What types of skills do you want students to have, particularly in the areas of written communication, oral communication, quantitative reasoning? What are those core skills that demonstrate someone is a Kane graduate? You need to have that conversation, particularly with your discipline. What are the skills related to your discipline? What should a communication major skill set be at the time of graduation that you can demonstrate that's a Kane graduate? And the same with the values. What are those value sets? Is it high ethics, respect for diversity? What are those core indicator values that Kane is promoting in your discipline that you can agree on, that you want to ensure? And finally, you do want to talk about your outcome objectives. What do you want Kane students, your graduates, to go on and do in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years after they graduate? What are you projecting them to do? How are you ensuring that you've put them in the best possible situation to succeed? And that's really sort of the conversation that needs to go on. So when we talk about academic objectives and skills, I want to talk about what we've decided here in the School of General Studies, Kane University, is what we call the Kane brand. The School of General Studies actually has 9 student learning outcomes. But the two that I think, the 2 skills that are most important is this written and oral communications. And what we're trying to essentially say is that Kane graduates can write proficiently and can communicate orally proficiently in a way that signifies that they are collegiate graduates. And again, when we must not overlook the simplicity of these 2, because these 2 skills right here, as much as anything, gets at why we have assessment in the first place. Assessment, beyond the cost raising, assessment started as a generic complaint against college graduates and institutions of higher education in general, probably about 25, 30 years ago. But certainly 25, 30 years ago is when it really started to pick up steam. And essentially what employers started to complain about is students came out, they had a bunch of knowledge, they had a bunch of jumbled facts, but if you asked them to write a paper or write a memo, they couldn't put that out. And if you asked them to do an oral presentation, they'd fumble all over themselves. And so these complaints continued to sort of grow on and on. And so when we start talking about ensuring written and oral communications, that is essentially to answer that generic criticism of higher education. And so we utilize rubrics, which are measurement tools, to ensure that Kane students moving forward will meet some level of proficiency in written and oral communication. Now, let me be clear. This doesn't happen by some sort of, miracle. There needs to be opportunities, more opportunities in the curriculum from the time a student starts at Kane to the time a student graduates, for them to continue to work on these skills, continue to present orally, continue to speak in front of classes, in front of other audiences, and continue to write. And so, too often, in my observation here, is that there's still too many opportunities for students to essentially achieve a grade through multiple choice tests. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying the multiple choice exam is evil in and of itself, but in and of itself, it is a limited measurement of what students can do. Outside of Kane University, what's going to determine a student's success is often how well they write, how well they can speak, and obviously things like critical thinking and quantitative reasoning, which are also two of those skills that continue to recur. Those types of activities, to be able to problem solve and to be able to write and communicate orally effectively, will determine student success. And so I want to be very clear about this. We utilize these rubrics as tools, but across this curriculum, I want to know, the question I continue to ask myself is, by the time a student graduates from an undergraduate degree, how many 10-page papers have they written by the time they get a degree? Is it 10? I hope it's at least 10. Is it 15? Is it 20? That's the question I'm really confronted with at this point. Because I'm going to tell you something. If it's only 2 or 3, obviously we have students write a 10-page paper in research and technology, fine. And most writes about 10 pages, if not more, in their senior seminar. So those are clearly two areas. But where else is there writing? Are we just utilizing multiple choice not as a teaching tool, but just as an effective way to measure a large number of students quickly? Because you can throw it in a Scantron machine. If you're doing that, then it's time to take a step back and see what we can do better. We do have these rubrics. The School of General Studies has rubrics. If you haven't seen them, you should certainly acquaint yourself with them. The rubrics themselves are tools. And let me give you the real magic of a rubric. A rubric becomes much more successful not when an instructor just uses them in isolation, but when you assign the writing assignment or the presentation assignment, at the point at which you assign that assignment, you give the student the rubric. That way they have a good sense of the expectations that are to come from that assignment. But then, where the rubric also has value is at the end of the assignment. Even with the writing assignments that occur at Kane, many of them occur in what I call the black hole. In other words, the major writing assignment is due at the end of the semester. You hand it in. The student almost never gets the paper back from there, and then they get the final aggregate grade. So they might not even know what they even got on that paper. But more importantly, a good rubric provides constant feedback to students on their written work, on their oral presentation work. This allows them to become reflective learners, so each time through, they get a little bit better. And so I want to make sure that, again, the best practices of rubrics is to give the rubric to the student at the point of assignment and to give them back their rubric scored at the end of the assignment with some suggestions on how it is they can make improvement.